I tell people all the time, I knew that I was going to marry Caroline probably within 2 weeks of dating. And we were engaged in about a year, and then got married 9 or 10 months later, and now we have a 21 month old now, almost 21 months. Baby James.
When did you tell Caroline that you didn't drink?
I think that the day I met her.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone I know knows that I don't drink unless we haven't had a conversation for longer than 5 minutes. So, I mean, even my customers know. I'm a pretty open book about my recovery, because I believe that the more I talk about it, the more people know who they can reach out to if someone else is having an issue.
All right, we are back with another episode of Conversations Beyond Table 5. Today I have a very special guest, Bret M, as we say, or Bret Mealing to the outside world. Bret Mealing Jr., rather. Let's get that straight.
Right.
Bret, welcome to the show, Conversations Beyond Table 5.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. I'm very excited. Now, Bret, you grew up in Columbia. Were you born here?
I was born in Charleston and moved back here when I was really young, like before I was a year.
You don't remember?
No,
Okay.
I don't remember. But basically born and raised here. Both my parents are from here, so born and raised pretty much Columbia. Lived here pretty much my entire life.
All right. And do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one sister who's 20. Wait, she just turned 30. Her name's Anne. She has Down syndrome. And then I have a little brother named Wells, who's 26. I think maybe just turned 27.
So, and how old are you?
32.
So you're the oldest.
I'm the oldest.
And there's Anne and Wells.
That's right.
I know Anne very well from coming into Crave.
She's a sweetheart.
Yes, very sweet. Now, your parents have their own business.
That's right.
And you work for the business.
I do.
And how long have they had that business?
South Carolina Embroidery and Screen Printing opened in 1995 when I was 5 years old. And so that's been, I can't even do the math on that, 30.
A long time.
It's been a long time.
A long time.
Most of my life.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, what were they doing before that?
I think when I would, like, from birth to 5, I think my mom taught at where I went to preschool or daycare at Eastminster, and my dad had a painting business.
Really?
Painted houses around Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he was a painter?
That's right.
And then he got into the screen printing business.
Correct.
And what made him do that?
That's a great question. I don't even know if I've asked. But I know that, they had me young and they wanted to be successful and wanted to provide for myself and my siblings, and getting into that industry worked out really well for them.
That's good. Because, it's a very successful business now. And do you remember any of their struggles early on? Did they have...
I know, so I grew up on Klein Street, right around the corner from here. And our office was in the building behind the Mad Platter, where the collective is. And we started in one of the smaller buildings, and we grew a little bit, and we moved a few doors down to a bigger space, and then eventually we moved to the spot directly behind the Mad Platter on that there's a little inner parking spot behind there, and we were there. We worked out of there until 2008, which was my senior year of high school. So, and then we moved to Office Shop Road, next door to Sea Hunt Boats.
So you saw growth.
So I saw growth.
Beginning.
I know my dad worked his behind off. He was there all the time. My mom and I would go hang out, help count shirts, do whatever we needed to do. There's an awesome picture that my parents have of my sister fell asleep in a Hanes t-shirt box while we're all there helping work late night. So yeah, I mean, I know that they put everything they had into it.
That's awesome. And I love that you can remember the, going from, starting a small business and growing into it. And I would assume that gives you a certain appreciation for what you're doing now.
Very much so. I think I feel like growing up through middle school and high school, I think it was just always in my nature to know that I wanted to continue to work because I worked for him summers and when I wasn't necessarily doing, if I had nothing else going on, they needed help, so I was there to help. And I think it was just always kind of in the writing for me to eventually continue to work there and hopefully one day take over and continue to grow the business.
What do you do for them now?
Sales.
Yep. Okay. And you're some marketing too. I guess sales is
kind of marketing for us because we're working with the customer to help create what they have kind of envisioned for what they want, whether it's on a t-shirt or a jacket or on a koozie or a pin.
Crave orders from y'all very small. Y'all order lunch from us much more than we order pins from y'all. But I'll tell you, I didn't know what you did there, and I just kind of thought that it was the family business, so you were there. But you do have quite the marketing mind. I'll give you that. I don't give you many props, but I'll give you that.
I'll take it.
Because
you.
You're smart with it.
I appreciate that.
Now, so
I just was thinking about the first time, like when I really met you, I came to try to sell you maple syrup.
That was some good maple syrup.
It's the best maple syrup.
It didn't quite fit with the local South Carolina products because it was from Canada.
From Canada.
But it's delicious. So.
It is delicious.
And we sold it.
Yeah.
We sold it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But anyway, that's funny. And you and your mom came in, and I was like, I remember seeing something on the Facebooks that you had gotten married or something, and then you and your mom came in, and she looked so young. I was like, wow, he married someone a couple years older than he is. And it's your mom.
We get that a lot.
Yeah. She's young.
My mom,
my age.
My parents are very young.
Yeah.
For having a 32-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny. I think one time she took me to a doctor's appointment where I wasn't going to be able to like drive home because I can't remember what it was. And the nurse was like, all right, so let's, tell your wife this. And I was like, oh, that's my mom.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. But my mom,
she doesn't mind that at all.
Loves those compliments.
Yeah, I understand that. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. Anne has Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Do you remember finding out that was going to be the case?
I don't know if I remember like how I learned about it, or I don't think I was old enough to quite understand what Down syndrome was when she was born because we're 2 years apart. But just throughout growing up, it was not necessarily a learning process. I think it was more of a learning process for my parents, but for me as a sibling, she was just, one of my best friends, and we hung out and did stuff all the time together. And I started to understand more about Down syndrome and, having one less chromosome and how the science of it works and then also like the personality aspect of it. And she's always just been the happiest person I've ever met, and cheers you up every time you see her. And it's funny, she works with us too. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, the time she's not happy is when she's not at work, because she loves working so much.
Right.
And if she has to go run an errand with my mom and can't be at the office, she's so angry.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. But she's, one of the only people who I know that hates taking a day off or to go to the beach for a week. because she misses being at the office.
Yes, that's not the case these days.
It's not the case these days for most people. For anyone.
Anne's not going to be a quiet quitter.
No, not yes.
She would go madly into that night.
Exactly.
So what? Like, how was it? How did people treat her? Did you see people bully her or anything like that?
Not really. I think maybe there had been like comments, or I think I was more sensitive to the word retard back in the day, and like in middle school when it was just easy for people to say retard or gay or whatever it might have been, and when that word was said, it would strike a chord with me. And sometimes I would just push it down and move on. Sometimes I would say something to somebody. But nothing, I think everyone knew who she was. I mean, we're, you know me, I'm a little social butterfly and love talking to people and have a lot of friends. And I think everyone just knew who she was and loved her the way most of the way that we loved her too. So, didn't have too many, issues with that.
Good. Are there any childhood memories that you have, like any childhood traumas that you can discuss here on this very public forum where millions of people are listening?
Millions of people. I mean, hopefully one day millions of people will be listening.
Right.
That would be amazing. And you'd have a sweet studio, and I won't be, out of breath from moving this couch for you before we started. I don't think there was anything super significant. I do recall, like, I feel like I always felt a little bit different. Not in a way of the way I looked or the way I acted or the way I, athletic ability or anything like that. Just more the way I felt inside. And I don't know what it was. And we'll, I guess, eventually come to find out what I think that came to be. But
you felt different on the inside?
Yeah, just...
What age do you remember? Does that memory get back to?
Probably sometime in middle school. And I think I blocked it out pretty well and didn't let it affect me too bad.
What's your first memory of experiencing pain?
Pain?
Like emotional pain, not like, oh, that hammer fell on my foot.
Wow. I'm trying to dig deep for that one. That's a good question. I guess I wasn't thinking I was going to talk about this, but I think there was a time where I don't know what it was, but it was a semi like suicidal aspect, and I think that whatever was going on in my head, I just felt that it would just be better if I just didn't have to live life anymore. And it was nothing about my it had nothing to do with my family or the way I was raised or anything like that. I think it was just me feeling uncomfortable in my own skin.
How old were you?
Probably 14 or 15, something like that. Which is ironically right around the time I first started using substances.
Oh, yeah. Interesting how that has a correlation.
But yeah, I think maybe something, I guess that.
Interesting to, put it back there and not have any real event or anything that, and sometimes maybe it's buried deep in us, or maybe it's just a thing where that's how we felt. That's how we felt around people, and diving into substances certainly helps with that feeling of pain.
Exactly.
And speaking of substance, yet another thing we have in common, substance misuse. I think that's the word they say.
The nice way to say it now.
Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, I could keep up. But And I think a disclaimer, because I'm public about being in recovery, and I don't necessarily name the recovery community I'm involved with which I'm involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I don't is because I don't want someone to think that I'm a member of this society, and then tomorrow if I get drunk, it's the society's fault.
Correct.
Like if I get drunk tomorrow, it's because I didn't do what was suggested.
Correct.
There are no rules in our society.
Yeah.
In our secret society here.
So secret.
So secret. So secret. It has 2 letters. Starts with A. Tell me a little bit about your entrance into the society, or what brought you here.
Yeah, I love how you put. I guess I first want to say I am forever grateful for the recovery community that surrounded me. I definitely wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the program that we work. But I think I felt like I'd started drinking and doing drugs as common as it was around me. Just kind of fell into, if a friend was doing it, I was going to do it, or however it might have been. Drinking on weekends, high school parties, smoked weed a few times. Nothing crazy that I thought. But I did know that it made me feel more a part of when I was around people that I was drinking with. And that, even the very first time I ever drank alcohol, I was with a group of guys that I thought were cooler than me, better than me, more athletic than me, all these different things that I just felt less than. And then during that time period of drinking with them, all of that fell away. And I felt as cool as them and could do what they could do. And
isn't that wild how a liquid substance
it's crazy
can make all of those feelings go away?
It is a very wild thing.
Yeah.
That's what that does.
And that feeling right there is what we chase until the minute we don't.
That exact feeling was what I chased for the rest of the time that I was drinking and doing drugs.
When was your first drink?
14.
When was your last drink?
September 1st, 2011.
And you were how old?
21.
Wow. You were 21 when you quit drinking?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's great.
It was great. I appreciate that I got sober younger.
Yeah. God, you're so
I know
fortunate.
a lot of people have a hard time getting sober or even consider doing that at that age. And it wasn't my first go around trying. But that was just part of I think that's just the way the cookie crumbled for me on that one.
Right. Tell us about the first time trying.
First time trying, I guess we'll call it trying. It wasn't quite an attempt.
The first time you made other people think you were trying.
The first time I made other people think I was trying, I had gone through a lot of stuff here. We'll backtrack a little bit. I'd gotten kicked out of Clemson Bridge, and came back home. Had me being a drug addict and alcoholic, I had a horrible relationship with my parents. That was my fault, not theirs, and ended up quitting working for my family. Or maybe I was fired. I don't even remember how that went down really. But it didn't go down very well. And then I started working at a bar in 5 Points, and that's when things really picked up and things were really bad. The drug use got really bad. And then I'd been evicted from a house that I was living in, and I showed up at my parents' house one day, from what I remember, and they pretty much had a bag packed, and they were like, "You're coming with us, or you're not ever coming back here again." So I got in the car with them, and they drove me down to Statesboro, Georgia, which is in the middle of nowhere. And that's where I went to my first rehab. And I think, when I got there, I didn't think I had a drug problem. I thought I was just some college age kid that
how
liked
old
to
were
party.
you for the first time?
I had just turned 21.
Okay.
So that was February 28th. My birthday's February 8th. And so I went 20 days after I turned 21. I went to my first rehab. And
oh my God, you can finally drink so
yeah, I could finally drink legally, and then I get
go.
shipped to this place.
Off you go.
Off I went, and I did not believe that I was like the other people that were there.
Right.
And the people that were there were a lot of the people I weren't used to being around, with heroin addicts and older people that said they'd been drinking, a liter of vodka their whole, every day since they were 20 and they were 50. And I just couldn't, I couldn't, but I also didn't want to find the connection between myself and those other people. And it took me, I did learn a lot about the program and about recovery, and I think that helped me on my second go around. But I was there with a couple other younger guys, and we kind of just didn't care and started drinking and hiding it. And
that's cool.
Yeah, when you're in a rehab and you're not supposed to be drinking,
and you're drinking, you feel so cool.
You feel horrible about yourself. For being honest, it was not okay.
Oh, really?
And hiding it, and hiding about how we paid for it, because it was very strict on how much money they gave us every week, and to try to live there. And so I was there for it. I did the inpatient part. It was about 30 days, and then went to their halfway house, and which I didn't find this out until my parents came down for a parent visit, and they were like, "Oh, we want you to go to this place. It's a year." And I thought I was there for 6 weeks or something. So I was a little upset when.
So how long you were in the 30-day place?
I can't remember exactly. I think it was, I did the detox, and detoxing off cocaine isn't nearly as bad as detoxing off of a lot of other things that people were in there for.
Were you, before you left the 30 days, within 30 days, you were drinking again at the place?
No, I had gone to the halfway house, and I think it took a couple months before my buddies and I
so you're sneaking,
kind of had the balls.
You're at the halfway house, and you're sneaking stuff down. Okay.
Right. Yeah, so we'd gone to the halfway house, and that's when we'd gotten some more freedom, and we were told to get a job and go to a certain amount of meetings, and I could go to this gas station and buy some alcohol and sneak it back in my backpack back to the house and basically lock myself in a room and drink with one or two other guys.
It sounds like so much fun.
It was not fun. And so eventually things came to a head. They all started the counselors found out. We got kicked out. And I kind of
wait. Your parents came and said, "We want you to go to a place for a year." This is before you got kicked out.
This was before I got kicked out.
All right, so they said, "We want you to go for a year." Then what happened?
Well, I got really mad, but I went because I had nowhere else to go.
Okay, so you go to another place.
Well, it's the same place. It's like the same place. It's just like their next part of their program.
Okay.
It's like a continuation.
Okay.
It's going from inpatient to outpatient, basically.
Okay. And
but
they're like, you're gonna stay here for a year, and then you get kicked out.
And then I got kicked out after. It kind of took a while for them to find everything out. I think I'd been there. I got kicked out in around sometime in September. I'd stopped drinking and doing drugs on September 1st, but they didn't really find out all the details of everything until a little bit later. And so I ended up getting kicked out and went to the next rehab in Atlanta in November of that same year.
Okay.
So I showed up at the second rehab with 2 months sober, but it was a whole wash of lies of sobriety. It was just me actually not putting chemicals into my body for that period of time. But I remember getting kicked out.
What was that like with your parents? I've been kicked out.
From what I remember, they told me basically, and then I kind of ran away. And so I was kind of couch surfing / homeless / didn't know what I was doing for about a week until my parents finally came and picked me up. And they were terrified. They didn't know where I had gone, what was going on.
Right.
I didn't have a phone. Thankfully, my sponsor down there, they called him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw him here. He's staying with this guy tomorrow. Come pick his ass up."
Yeah. So you go to Atlanta.
So I go to Atlanta, and that was when everything really changed for me. I think I was so... I hate disappointing my parents, and that's just one of the things that means a lot to me, is making my parents proud and doing the best that I can. And I know that car ride from Statesboro to Atlanta was not a good one.
Right.
And I was crying, and I was sad, and I was sorry, but being sorry in that situation doesn't fix anything. So I knew that I really had to actually try to give it an effort this time.
How did they know to use such tough love and not? Because I mean, they've got their 21-year-old son crying and saying he's sorry. You're only 21. Maybe you need a second chance. How did they know to say, "Shut up, we're going to Atlanta"?
I think, thankfully, they know some people in recovery in Columbia. One of them is a good friend of theirs who suggested the second place that I go to, and they were going to Al-Anon.
Oh, good.
Which was, I think that was the saving grace during some of that. Yeah. And the family counselors at both places really helped them be like, look, he's either gonna put an effort and make this work, or he's not. And if he's not, y'all can't force him to do it. And I think they learned that pretty quick, which was, thumbs up to those family counselors that helped them with that kind of stuff.
And Al-Anon, it's so good.
And Al-Anon, yeah.
Gabor Mate has a definition of addiction that I just love. And he says, well, addiction is a complex psychological process, but it has a few key components. Addiction manifests in any behavior that a person finds temporary pleasure or relief in, and therefore craves, suffers negative consequences from, and has trouble giving up.
I think that's pretty spot on.
Spot on.
I mean, there's nothing I can say to even add to that would make sense, especially for someone who's not an alcoholic. I feel like that helps explain that to a lot of people.
And I think it generalizes the term so much better, that it's not just drugs, it's not just alcohol. It's, because when I lived in New York, I used to joke that there's a 12-step program for everything. Like if you tie your shoelaces too many times, you can go to a 12-step meeting about it. But this opens up, and now there really are in different meetings for
all kinds
various
of stuff.
different things.
Yeah.
And that's so fortunate, and it's great. And this says it, and because there are many other issues that people have, and I think it just kind of says it's okay to have those other issues.
Right.
Now, when you go to your former high school and talk about this, what's your main message when you talk to them?
That's one of my favorite service things that I do. That's not directly in a 12-step program. Just because I love the high school that I went to, and go Skyhawks, big Hammond guy. I was asked to do...
Hold on. Tell about the time. What did the Skyhawks mess up with the t-shirts?
Oh, man, that was not good. I don't even know if I want to talk about that on here. We just had a misspelling one time, and I think like a second grader noticed the misspelling, and we had to reprint all the shirts.
It's awesome.
Good times.
It's a great story.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Hate to bring that up when you're on such a big cloud.
I know, right?
Talking about victory in addiction. But, it's all about, we are in an ego deflation program.
We are in ego deflation, and, nobody's perfect.
Right. So what do you tell the little Skyhawks? And how old are they?
So I do the senior class every year.
Okay. And
it's during what they call senior transition day, and it's right before graduation. And I'm just a segment of their day. They do a Mike Geneva self-defense class. They hear from a student panel of kids that are currently enrolled in college that come back and talk. And then I go with usually another medical professional that's somewhat involved in the field of recovery. And I basically tell them my story, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. And I'm not promoting recovery. it's more of an awareness, especially, and I separate, I do a talk with the guys and then I do a talk with the girls. The guys is usually a little bit different. It's more, take care of your friends, be aware of the signs, be honest with them and upfront with them and confront them if you think that their drinking or drug use is affecting their school or their relationships or whatever it may be, what kind of consequences they may be suffering from it.
What is the pushback when you're telling 17-year-old kids, basically, speak your feelings? I mean, 17-year-old boys, speak your feelings. If you see your friend, talk to them about
it's actually pretty good. Well, and here's the best part about, I think, with what I do with that is I don't let any parents or faculty in there. So it's just me and the kids. And that, I think that allows them to be more open and more conscious of thinking about how that could play out. And after they've heard my story and about how, people would call me out or, let my parents know what was going on or what might be going on, and how that saved my life. Then when they look around the room and they're looking at some of their best friends, then they can go, I really don't want my friend to die. And I think that really brings out the willingness for them to consider making that type of an effort. And then the girls is more, it's a similar conversation along with that of being aware of the signs, but also like self-preservation and making sure that when they do go out to a bar, not to just drink any drink that some random stranger gives them, and not to hop in an Uber without verifying exactly that they're the right driver and that they're not alone, or walking home alone from 5 Points. Make sure you have a buddy with you or things like that. So it's good. I really enjoy doing it, and I feel like I've gotten pretty good feedback from them. I've been doing it for 7 years now.
Wow.
Except for 1 year during COVID.
That age, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin, and I don't think I heard that phrase until I joined recovery. And but that so describes especially that time of my life, but really for the next, probably up until I was about 30, being very uncomfortable in my own skin. Right. It can still be that some days, don't get me wrong. But I would love to just drill that into anybody's head, but much less, especially that age.
Yeah.
And
I feel like when I make it, they relate. I like that I go back to my school because they know that I was sitting in the same chair they were sitting in, and that they can relate a lot more to what I have to say than some. I think when I was there, it was like some old cop that was like, "Don't do drugs." And went and got high in the parking lot after. So it was pointless. But when I come in and I can relate and say that I've sat in the same seat they're in, and
literally,
and that I've lost friends and that I've lost family and I've lost things to alcoholism and drug addiction, that it makes it that much more real. And they know there's plenty of kids that have graduated from Hammond that have passed away from drugs, from overdoses or DUI crashes or things like that. So it kind of brings it home a little bit more for them, which is good.
Good. Tell me, so you're 21, and the November of your Atlanta rehab, you're 21 that year, right?
Right.
So we're all in the same year. How long were you in Atlanta rehab?
In rehab, it was basically straight to a halfway house, and I was in the halfway house for around 3 months. And then I went to the 3/4 house, which had a lot more freedom, and was there for about another 3 months.
Okay.
And then I didn't leave Atlanta for 5 years.
Wow. When did you start dating? A 21-year-old kid, sober, you started dating.
Well, I should not have been messing around with some females while I was in the 3/4 house.
You were talking to girls?
Talking to girls, seeing them when I wasn't supposed to be seeing them, things like that. But then I got into a relationship when I had about 9 months.
So your first relationship was a sober girl.
Yes.
Okay.
And we dated for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't have any, you should date someone in recovery or date someone not in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of my best friends, him and his wife, they're both sober and they've been married for a while and they have 2 kids. And I have other friends like myself that are married to people that aren't sober and are doing great too. I don't think there's a...
Yeah, I don't either. But I think that where I was going with that was to be 21 and sober and then try to go out of the dating world. Very good thing that the first person was, I mean, probably.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think at that age, well, I was surrounded in the recovery community, and I didn't know anybody else in Atlanta. I didn't have friends that had graduated from college by then and were working and going out and inviting me to go to a party. It was going to 12-step meetings every single day, hanging out with those friends, and Atlanta recovery there's so many young people, and it was easy. We would have parties where the cops would get called, and they'd be like, "What is going on?" Yeah. Like the neighbors have called 5 times,
nerds.
And I would open a cooler up and it'd be full of Red Bull and Gatorade, and the cops just didn't understand what was happening. And I was like, "I promise, no one's drinking. Everyone can drive home. It'll be fine."
I love getting pulled over now, even though I get a speeding ticket. Yeah. I'm like, there's nothing in this car.
Nothing.
You can look under the seat. I don't care.
Yep, that's true. But I think that was what helped me stay sober for those 5, like really stay sober for those 5 years, was being that age and being able to have all the fun that I wanted to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Because not having fun in recovery doesn't make you want to be in recovery.
Right.
So why would I want to try to stay sober if I see on social media my friends in college partying and drinking and hanging out with girls and doing all this stuff and going on trips while they're drinking, and then I'm sitting here like just going to work and coming home? That would be miserable. So having that community of all these young people and having parties and going to dinners and doing whatever we wanted to do, that was the best part. We were free to do whatever we wanted to do. I didn't have to look behind my back or hit up a drug dealer or worry about if I should drive or not drive, or I didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Or feel uncomfortable in your own skin.
Or feel uncomfortable in my own skin at that point.
Yeah, I mean that was gone.
Right.
And what a great age to have that experience of not feeling that uncomfortableness. That's excellent, and what a gift for all of those young people that got it at that age. I did not.
Yeah.
It took me a while.
I have a lot of, some of my best friends, some of the guys that were in my wedding, we all kind of got sober around the same time, and I think there was a core group of guys that we went through halfway and 3/4. I think there were probably like 8 or 9 of us that were really tight, and I think almost all of us are still sober.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So speaking of your wedding,
yep.
Where did you meet your lovely bride, Caroline?
Well, she went to Hammond as well.
Oh, really?
Her brother was a class behind me, and they moved here from Montreal. And but we didn't really reconnect or get to start knowing each other until I moved back here from Atlanta.
Okay.
So I knew who she was. She was working at a gym, teaching classes that my parents went to, and then the connection was made. We started dating, and I get smitten pretty easily, and
I'm shocked.
Yeah, shocked. And I tell people all the time, I knew that I was going to marry Caroline probably within 2 weeks of dating. And we were engaged in about a year, and then got married 9 or 10 months later, and now we have a 21-month-old now, almost 21 months. James, baby James.
When did you tell Caroline that you didn't drink?
I think that the day I met her.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone I know knows that I don't drink unless we haven't had a conversation for longer than 5 minutes. So I mean, even my customers know. I'm a pretty open book about my recovery because I believe that the more I talk about it, the more people know who they can reach out to if someone else is having an issue.
Right.
And that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had from this is if all those people that I went to meetings with didn't come to me or support me or I didn't know that I could call on them for help, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So I want to be that for anybody, I love it, and I tell even family members, I was like, tell people, I don't care.
Right.
And it's, my mom has told people who her friends have maybe called me about their son or about a family member, and I'll talk to them and do the best that I can to try to help point them in some sort of direction to either get them into a treatment center or help take them to a meeting or whatever it might be. 'Cause that's my purpose now.
Right.
In recovery is to help other people get sober.
What's your purpose in life?
I think it's just to help others in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and God, I'm not perfect with any of this stuff. But I think I like doing it. And I'm still selfish in a lot of ways, but not nearly as selfish as I used to be during active alcoholism. But just being there for somebody or picking up the phone when someone calls or helping you move a couch for, for nothing, and it's not a big deal. And I just enjoy doing stuff like that.
That's excellent. When are you going to tell James about your addiction history or past?
I mean, probably as soon as he'll understand.
I think it's so important.
I have nothing to hide.
Right.
And if it's something that he can learn about early on, then he'll know. I mean, I want him to know who I am.
All my nieces and nephews know, and they've known. And, I like to help think or in whatever small way it helps them as they go through, their own journeys.
Yeah, because when they get to a point where they go to a high school party or whatever it might be, and they know, well, Uncle John doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Or my dad, for James to go, my dad doesn't drink. I wonder, why do I have to do like this, like everybody else is doing?
Yeah.
Why are they peer pressuring me to do this?
Right.
So
and I think it's because for me it was I was so scared to do it, and it was such a taboo thing, and then to be able to sneak it, and then that feeling that it gave, that immediately taken away all that fear that I, thought it did. But it's just important for them to know. Well, that's great. So what is life like? I mean, you've said that recovery, your job is good, home life is good. That it all sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we have a friend that likes to say, yeah, things are good.
Yeah, things are good. And they are.
And they are. I mean, and it's all because of recovery, and that's something that I try to remember every single day is I wouldn't have my job, I wouldn't have my wife and son, I wouldn't have my car or my house or any of these things if it wasn't for recovery. I wouldn't have the relationships with my parents and my brother and sister and the rest of my family. And so I have to, remember that because of recovery, I have all these things. And so that's why that has to stay the most important thing in my life. Because if I lose my recovery, then I can lose all the other things that follow it. So easily. And I've seen it happen. And that's the other cool part, but not cool part about recovery is you see that happen with other people. We've seen people relapse. We've seen people overdose and die. We've seen people lose things after getting so much stuff from recovery. And that's why we continue to do what we do. Yeah. Because we don't want to lose those things, and we want to continue to build and grow and I have, not that things are great that I'm just chilling. I obviously have aspirations to grow in many other ways. My head's always churning. I always have ideas.
Yeah.
I remember even before I got sober, I had a list in a notebook of things that I thought were like really cool, or like inventions and things. Mm-hmm. My head's always doing things like that. And I think that's probably what you were talking about in the beginning with that kind of marketing mind. And my head's always come up with ideas, whether it's to make money, whether it's to help someone else, whether it's to just do something because I think it's fun or cool.
Yeah.
So
excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed it. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
I don't think so. Just that I'm grateful, and recovery rocks.
Things are good.
Things are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And I will say, our relationship is awesome, and we have a group of guys that we have built this community with, and we're such a tight-knit group, and that I really think keeps all of us so whole and connected, and continuing to try to keep up with our sobriety and keep up with each other, and help make each other better, and that was a big thing for me, because when I first moved back to Columbia, I didn't really know too much about the recovery community here and stuff, and I kind of just had to dive in one day, and was lucky enough to get to meet all the guys that I know today. So
it's pretty cool. It's amazing. It's quite a gift. I can't imagine my life without it either.
Yep.
But anyway, all right. Well, thanks, Bret.
Thanks,
I've enjoyed it, and thank you all for listening. And don't forget to, Bret, help me promote this.
Like, share, subscribe, comment, repost, review,
all that good
all
stuff.
the things.
All the things.
YouTube.
That's right.
Instagram.
That's right.
Spotify.
Excellent. Do it all.
Do it all.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.